Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our Way Forward Workshop Leader Lunch Break. We are thrilled to welcome Michael Goldberg. He is a venture capitalist, a faculty member, a Fulbright Fellow, a MOOC master, and always an entrepreneur. Michael Goldberg's ventures and adventures are many. He founded the Bridge Investment Fund, focused on investing in medical devices, served as Director of International Business Development for America Online, where he negotiated international partnerships in Asia to include China. He designed voter education programs for the National Democratic Institute in South Africa in anticipation of their first democratic election in 1994. And he also served at Microsoft and at IMG. He has been awarded not one, not two, but 3 Fulbright fellowships that have taken him to Vietnam, Namibia, and the Canary Islands. He's conducted seminars for the United States Department of State across the globe in 30 countries. He's taught in Turkey and Greece. He's a contributor on MSNBC, in addition to sharing his perspectives on international entrepreneurship in Forbes, at CNBC, the Huffington Post, and entrepreneur.com. His massive open online course, MOOC, has attracted over 175,000 students. You will be relieved to know that he is now firmly planted in Cleveland, where we can benefit from his talent and expertise as a faculty member of design and innovation at the Weatherhead School and the inaugural executive director of the Veale Institute for Entrepreneurship at Case. He gives back mightily as a Jumpstart mentor, serving on the board of IdeaStream and Mount Sinai, to name a few. At the Leadership Center, we like to believe that he got his start and all of his inspiration from our high school Look Up to Cleveland program, and he refined that focus through Leadership Cleveland. Michael, thank you for being with us today.
Thanks, Mary Ann. Thanks for the nice intro. Nice to see everybody today. I was looking at the participant list. It's the Adlers, our new dean at the business school at John Carroll. A lot. Congratulations. My mom. It's like a real potpourri of my life here in the participants. So yeah, I will, I love this format, actually, sort of be brief and take your questions. And the topic of today, which is near and dear to my heart, is sort of internationalization broadly. And I know the team at the Leadership Center wanted to talk a little bit about kind of the ongoing conflict in Ukraine and some of the impact even in our tech startup community here in Cleveland. So I'll try to be brief. I'm going to share my screen and show you just a couple of websites and pages and LinkedIn profiles just to kind of stimulate conversation. And yeah, I look forward to chatting. And with that, let me share one quick second, get the right screen. You would think I know this after being on Zoom for 2 years. So here we go. Okay, so a couple quick things. As Marian mentioned, I developed a course for Case, a MOOC, a massive open online course in 2014 called Beyond Silicon Valley. It actually uses a case study of Cleveland and what we've done to support entrepreneurship through government, philanthropic, and private sector support. And when the conflict started in Ukraine, I reached out it's interesting with LinkedIn, which has really become a great tool for us at universities, obviously for many of us in the private sector. So I just basically sent a note to everybody that I was connected with from Ukraine and said, I'm assuming I know you through my MOOC. I want to do an online seminar talking about the tech community in the Ukraine, and this was early in the conflict, and sort of, through the eyes of tech entrepreneurs, kind of what's happening. And many of them, as I knew, were deeply connected, oftentimes working as development teams for folks in the US. So on March 4th, we put together a panel, actually Igor Tudelman on the upper left, one of my former students, of Ukrainian descent living in Cleveland, who's an entrepreneur. Sasha Bondar kind of once I sent out that note, Sasha wasn't a student, but he was referred to me by a student. He's an entrepreneur based in Lviv. And then interestingly, the TOA Technology, which is a company that was started in Cleveland by two Israeli entrepreneurs, Irad Karmi is pictured there. They sold to Oracle a number of years ago, but Irad's still with Oracle, and his tech team is still in the Ukraine. And then a local, another startup called Never Ending, Jamie Van Doren, who is a Case alum, the gentleman whose name is written in Cyrillic, is based in Kiev and working with him. And then Roman Shermita, some of you may have seen his name. He's a colleague of mine at Weatherhead. He moved to Kiev to become the rector of a new American university there. He then evacuated back here and now is back in Ukraine with a whole bunch of supplies, sort of helping. He's an amazing guy. So we had a really interesting discussion on the 4th. And, you know, I think what was telling, and I think I had some hypotheses around some of the deep connectivity between the tech community in a place like Cleveland and the Ukraine, but it runs deep, and there's a lot of support that is going on from our tech folks here in Cleveland, you know, with their sort of work family doing, you know, in the Ukraine. And it was a very interesting discussion. Obviously, it's very difficult to carry on work as normal in this situation with bombings and power going out and people trying to take care of their family. But it was a really interesting, by the way, I'll put a couple of links. We have that conversation recorded if anybody's interested. Just moving, just sort of a little bit of a random walk down kind of Cleveland and international connectivity. I'm assuming many of you, almost everyone on this call, has never heard of a internet a tech company called Jawab. I can't even pronounce it correctly. So this is a company that is basically, it's like kind of an Ask Me Anything, but it's a paid platform. Their market is in the Middle East. They've got millions of users. It was founded by Radmal House, who worked at Microsoft. The majority of their team is in the Middle East. Their customers are in the Middle East. Their website is, sorry, my Zoom is popped down. Hold on a second. Sorry, my little Zoom bar is over my, hold on. Okay, that'll work. Here's the website. It's all in Arabic. Radmal House lives on Harcourt. So he lives 5 doors down from me. He went to Case and then Purdue. He married a woman from Cleveland. You know, I think what's interesting, and I think it's more pronounced during the last 2 years of the pandemic, the ability to work from anywhere. So in this case, Raed is sitting in Cleveland Heights and often down at Case at ThinkBox running his company, and his entire team is based in the Middle East and his customer base is in the Middle East. So as we think about Cleveland and opportunities for our region, the fact that we have an entrepreneur running a really successful Middle Eastern-based tech company living in Cleveland Heights, I think is worth noting and talking about. So the last 2 things I'll share, diaspora and support. I mean, this obviously, as it relates to the Ukraine, is a huge topic. Whether we in Cleveland ultimately are supporting refugees that may be coming here. Another way that diaspora communities support folks back at home is through investing. And I mean, this is something that's taken place in Israel for many, many years, where whether folks in Northeast Ohio or other places have felt passion and enthusiasm for Israel as a nation, and then gotten excited about putting their investment, not philanthropic dollars, into investing in companies. I spent some time in Slovenia. I didn't see Joe Simperman on, one of his favorite Joe's of Slovenian descent and loves talking about travel to Slovenia. Actually, when I was there doing some work for the State Department in 2017, it was interesting. You know, we have a strong Slovenian community, and I think as we think about ways to strengthen and deepen our ties to the diaspora, whether it's the Ukraine, whether it's Slovenia, whether it's China, like investment can be a way that we do that. And again, that often comes out of your non-philanthropic pocket. There are ways to philanthropically support folks in these countries, but there's ways to do it with investment. I'm happy to talk more about that. And then finally, Kosovo, in 2016, actually, I wrote a piece on this. There's my son, Brenda's grandson, at the parade. I didn't quite plan my international travel around Cleveland sports championships, as most people on this call can attest. So I was in Switzerland for Game 7, and then Kosovo for the championship parade. Interestingly, I was doing some work. This is the Jawab Innovation Center, which is a really interesting center that's focused on supporting entrepreneurs in Kosovo. There's me, instead of being at the parade, with folks kind of talking about kind of our experience in Cleveland. And it turns out this guy was I don't know, we need to get him an Evan Mobley jersey now, but he was very interested. He was a Cavs fan, interested in our story in Cleveland. So it's also, I think, another piece of what we have to offer in Cleveland. And I was able to do this a bit from my MOOC, is like our own struggle to support entrepreneurship here, and looking to government and philanthropy, which have played a major role in supporting our ecosystem here, kind of alongside the private sector. So anyway, that was a few years ago, but we met through the MOOC. Interestingly, he's from Kosovo. He was at a conference in Germany, and there was a speaker from Dusseldorf who took my class and was talking about Cleveland. And he was like, I'm interested in Cleveland. So that led to me going to Kosovo. So with that, I think I'm just about on time. I will stop sharing and happy to answer any questions that folks have.
Great, Michael, thank you so much. So as we're looking at the conflict that's happening in Ukraine, there's a lot of talk about the economic impact. So as you observe the conflict and what's happening internationally, where do you see the biggest concern for economic impact from the current conflict?
So, I mean, it's funny, I just saw Brent Silvers is on. Brent, have you not moved overseas yet? I know you're leaving soon.
Not yet. I move in September.
Okay. We're fellow alums, as with Ron Richard and Karina Van Vliet from Council on World Affairs of SICE, the School of Advanced International Studies. So Brant could probably chime in with his perspective on this topic as well. I'll give it a first shot. So yeah, I mean, I think the macro impact we see in our gas prices and our food prices, and impact on our 401ks and and the equity markets. I mean, it has been the last year and all of the issues that we've seen coming out of the pandemic as it relates to supply chain. I mean, talent, it's such an interesting moment around talent. And I just found out today, somebody I was trying to hire, I thought that I had attracted, decided to take more money and work fully remotely. I mean, I'm so intrigued by, the relationships that we talked about with some of the tech companies in Cleveland using Ukrainian talent, or, there's a great young entrepreneur in the ed tech space who recently returned from Microsoft to Cleveland, really named David Boone. He sits by himself in ThinkBox because he sits right next to me, and his whole team is overseas. So, the diverse sources of talent was kind of here pre-pandemic. And I think, so many folks are sort of working remotely. So obviously that is not a Ukraine conflict specific issue. I do think, and for people like Brandon and myself, and probably many on this call who love travel, international travel has been significantly disrupted. I think many of us that are passionate about doing international travel and international business are doing it differently. We're doing it on things like this. I think investment, even in startups, many venture capitalists would say you needed to be in San Francisco next to the startups that you're investing in. I think it's beginning to change some of the dynamics of how people are investing. So broadly speaking, the pandemic, and then maybe specifically the continued conflict and the instability in the world related to the Ukraine, makes doing business different. And tools like we're using today are here to stay. Hybrid, and this is a little bit just with my educator, hybrid's here to stay. We're going to be doing things where, I think there's no going back to the way that we used to do things before, and tools like this are going to be incredibly important.
And building off of that, how can Cleveland leverage these new opportunities and the flexibilities that have presented themselves during COVID? How can we encourage entrepreneurs locally and attract them from elsewhere?
So some of it happened, Joni and Tom, when you can get Billy Adler back here to bring his exciting startup from Boston, so he can go to Cleveland sports events. We'll know we succeeded. I think, hey, there were folks, and many people I think anecdotally know stories of people that came from New York or San Francisco to kind of ride out the pandemic and stayed. Some have left. I think what's interesting is, what does remote work do for us as a region? And then what does eventually having that talent start things here do for us as a region? I had an experience, actually, Marianne mentioned, I was in the Canary Islands on a Fulbright in 2018 or 17. And I remember going into like a co-working space, and it was filled with basically remote workers for Yelp and Google and some other places. Like, they had chosen to move to the Canary Islands because it's really nice there, and they could work from anywhere. What was interesting was, and this was a discussion I had with the person running, I was like, oh, are these all entrepreneurs? They're like, actually, none of them have started companies. They're all working remotely. Now they're paying taxes and eating out and doing things to stimulate the local economy. And I think the hope is, whether it's the Canary Islands or Cleveland, that eventually that remote worker that is working for Facebook or Google or Twitter or wherever, is like, hey, I'm here and I'd like to start something here. I do think that some, it's interesting, obviously, with the news that Intel is building, its chip plant in Columbus, and that's important. And it's that's the shovels in the ground. That's where politicians cut ribbons, and like, you can see progress because things come out of the ground and things are made. And that is a lot of what Northeast Ohio and Ohio still is. That being said, not every new business is a shovel in the ground and a ribbon cutting. It may be, if Rachel, you and I start a new business tomorrow and we're here, but we hire a whole team based in other places, it's still good for Cleveland. But I do think that talent doesn't necessarily need to be here. But it's obviously good to have some of it here.
So what should U.S. entrepreneurs know or do if they are thinking about international markets, especially given the volatile and potentially additional volatile situations that exist across the globe?
That's an interesting question. It's funny just sort of showing LinkedIn profiles, like the ability, LinkedIn in particular, my kids sort of make fun of me. I'm like, oh, that's my social media. I'm not, although I'm super interested in TikTok, but that's a whole nother topic. If you want to talk about wasting time, seeing what people are doing. LinkedIn's a great way to connect with folks around the world and build I'm sure many of you probably get unsolicited outreach, sometimes not wanted, about somebody who wants to do some business with you that they meet on LinkedIn. But I do think, particularly when you see whose people's shared connections are, it's really interesting, and you can build trusting and trusted relationships, I think, in ways that we could have never foreseen. I mean, I now have contacts almost everywhere around the world. You know, it's interesting. There are Don Graves, class of 1988 from US, Leadership Cleveland alum, now #2 at Commerce. Like, actually, I saw him, he was back in Cleveland visiting his family a couple of weeks ago. I mean, there are programs like through the Department of Commerce, something called the Golden Key. Like, our government at a federal and at a state level, and actually even locally through organizations like Team Neo, like, there are ways that governments and nonprofits can help. I think a lot of it just comes down to building trusted relationships, which is hard when you can't travel like we all used to, but has become easier with platforms like LinkedIn.
So thinking about your massive open online course, to what do you attribute the massive success of this? And what's the impact of connecting thousands of individuals across the globe? And what's the benefit for Cleveland?
So it's interesting, and I'll put in I can share it with you, Rachel, you can share it later, like the links to the videos, and we worked with Northwater Partners right here in Cleveland to do the production, actually, and Catherine Levy, Eric Levy, who was a producer at 60 Minutes, really helped me kind of put the videos together. So it's a Cleveland story. I mean, I wasn't quite sure how that would resonate with people around the world. I mean, it's funny, that example I mentioned from Kosovo. I think, you know, yes, you can buy books about Silicon Valley or read the latest on Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos, but, like, you know, the Cleveland experience, and, you know, the fact that we're very much still fighting the good fight to try to make things better here. I mean, we've made some progress, but not where we need to be or could be. And I think that resonates with folks around the world that are also, and whether you're in Slovenia, Kosovo, Indonesia. I mean, I traveled to a whole bunch of places, and it was a really, I mean, hey, for those of us who are on this call, like, we obviously, I think the attributes that we have in Cleveland of sort of being humble, being hardworking, I think being open to, like, I mean, we're not the most braggy people, right? But we're putting out there our own experience. And I think that has resonated. I mean, on Monday night, we just finished a collaboration with a group of students in Cambodia. It was sort of a bizarre, because of the time difference. It was a class where we had 8:30 at night in Cleveland and 7:30 in the morning in Cambodia. Of course, they didn't know that we changed the time, so that week didn't work very well, but they don't have daylight savings. And it was inspired by an exhibition actually at the Cleveland Museum of Art, which I'm pointing to from my office, where they had this Revealing Krishna exhibition, and, like, just seeing a bunch of case students and Cambodian students sharing perspective on supporting entrepreneurship. So you know, for me, the MOOC has been just like a way to connect others, and you know, it's still out there, and we have people taking the class, so it's been good. It was a very unexpected experience for me, and been a lot of fun.
So as you look internationally for opportunities, there's a question around if India is in your perspective.
You know, it's funny, like, it's missing my own I've never been to India, and it's like the big gaping hole in my travel. We have a map at home with all my pins in it. So we did a joint venture when I was at AOL with India, but I never got to go. I mean, I think it's incredibly important. I mean, whether here at Case Western Reserve University, other folks in the Indian diaspora that live in Cleveland, and, you know, obviously our big, you know, the Sherwin-Williams of the world, the Edens of the world, that have deep connectivity in South Asia and India. So, yeah, I mean, I think it remains incredibly important, and it's a place that we have really good and deep connectivity, obviously, whether it's Case Western Reserve University or the region.
Is there a particular community that is doing entrepreneurship right, in your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just interesting. I mean, hey, I was just out in San Francisco a couple of weeks ago. And by the way, it's so bizarre. And this is just pandemic. I mean, usually I take these students on kind of like, it's almost like business tourism, but you go into these very cool offices with free food and, in the heart of San Francisco or Silicon Valley, like one of our alums who started a company called Augmented, like they're all working remotely. So they literally like opened the office for us and we were in there with one employee, and it's like, it's such a weird time. I mean, the Bay Area remains, even with a lot of things happening remotely, it's like, it's a hub of investment capital. It's a talent hub. I mean, there are a number of emerging cities, whether it's a Boston or an Austin or a Seattle or Berlin or Tel Aviv. I mean, there are cities that have some piece of this formula, right? They've attracted talent. But again, I think some of the things we're talking about in this post-pandemic world, hopefully where talent can sit in other places. I mean, this may be an opportunity for lower cost. I mean, I think we in Cleveland have talked forever. I mean, obviously I benefited from it, like lower priced housing versus where I was in DC. But I've often felt like that was like, it wasn't enough. Like, just saying how cheap our cost of living was didn't really bring the talent back here. And things may be changing a little bit. Now that we have our friend Veale Shah running Greater Cleveland Partnership, who has a deep love of all things Cleveland and international, maybe and global Cleveland, we can brainstorm with him on these topics.
What advice would you give to a young person who aspires to be an entrepreneur?
I mean, it's been fun. I mean, this university job is like, I don't know, my 4.0. I'm not sure where on my, the David Brooks, like second mountain or third mountain. I'm not sure which mountain this is for me. So it's fun. So I get to be here working with young people. Some of them like want to start something when they're here. It's awesome. So they are in class and they're prototyping. And we ThinkBox, by the way, which is free and open to public. If for any of you guys haven't been there, I would love to host you and come look me up and we can show you around. So it's filled with people that are tinkering. We also have a big subset of people that like, and some of you or your kids may be in this category, like they're not going to go start something right out of here, but you want to plant kind of seeds of possibility and then they come back to it at some other point. So it's, there's a lot of resource. I mean, whether it's like my own MOOC or other, I mean, there's a ton of resources that are out there. There's things in Cleveland that, events, Jumpstart, which obviously is a great organization that supports, high impact entrepreneurship. So there's a lot of different ways, I think, in Cleveland for people to get this experience. But sometimes it's like, it's a longer, you're playing the long game, like maybe they do it at some later point in their career.
We have time for one more question. So as you are looking ahead, what are you aware of that's on the cusp, the next thing, the next issue that we should be keeping our eyes and ears out for?
I mean, we're doing a lot on our campus in the sort of augmented reality, mixed reality space. There was an event this week, actually, where we had colleagues that are working on the HoloLens platform. It's one of the mixed reality platforms. Actually, for those who went to the Reveale Krishna, it was cool because they actually integrated this technology and used developers as a case. So that is very, I mean, part of these students from Cambodia and case, we're talking about, how do you promote tourism using augmented and mixed reality? We have a lot of stuff that's happening in the artificial intelligence space here, artificial intelligence as it relates to medical imaging. So there's a bunch. I mean, that's another fun part of campus. I get to work with tons of super bright colleagues that are, working on cutting edge research. The challenge is often, whether it's us or any other, or our hospital friends and partners, like how do you take federal research, and really smart ideas and turn it into business? That's not always so easy to do, but there's a lot that's happening.
Michael, thank you so much for sharing your work and insights on what's been going on these past few weeks. And we thank you for your time today. And I'm going to turn it back to Marianne.
Thanks, Rachel. Michael, this has been absolutely fascinating. Thank you for all that you are doing to inspire entrepreneurship globally, but primarily here in Cleveland. You give back mightily, and we are really, really grateful.